much. Next, I'd like to welcome Joseph Sella, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Fiji from 2019 to 2021. He's the director of the Michigan-China Economic and Security Review Group. In this role, he's expressed grave concerns about the aggressive efforts by certain leaders in Michigan to attract lithium-ion battery manufacturers from the People's Republic of China to this state. He believes that economic engagement with PRC-based companies can have perilous implications for both national and state security, and as these entities are closely tied to the CCP and its intelligence mechanism. Ambassador, you've had first-hand experience as an ambassador to a nation dealing with the People's Republic of China. Welcome, and we look forward to your comments.
Congressman LaHood, good meeting you, Congressman LaHood, for the first time. Distinguished colleagues here with me, and friends and citizen activists present today. It's certainly a delight to be with you who have been in this fight for a long time, having the hardest of jobs. Before I begin remarks, I would just like to recognize two of my children who are with me today, 10-year-old Mariana and 13-year-old Rita Rose. We were about to head out the door yesterday, and they said they wanted to come along, so there's nothing like a daughter field trip. So, Congressman Molnar, thank you sincerely for your strong leadership, and you, Congressman LaHood, and for the honor to deliver these remarks at this important roundtable and discussing the deep ties that PRC-based GOTION has with the Chinese Communist Party and the threat that that presents to our national security and our economic security. The fight against GOTION and my work through the Michigan-China Economic Security Review Group would not have been possible without those who have had the hardest of jobs here. Everyday Americans and citizen activists who are on the front lines, and the indispensable counsel and work of my former ambassadorial colleague, Peter Hoekstra, who co-founded the group with me, and it is a blessing to work with all of you. The importance of the timing of this roundtable and the gravity of the matter at hand cannot be overstated. For all practical purposes, the United States of America and the rest of the free world are now in a Cold War, though now with the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party. What is now our fight will be the fight of my children and grandchildren, and those of you here today deep into the century. As now retired Navy Admiral Mike Studeman, who when serving as the commander of the Office of Naval Intelligence stated in a February 2023 speech, the China problem is more gigantic than understood or appreciated. This is crystal clear, and we are seeing it happen real time on the shores of our beautiful lower peninsula of Michigan, in this GOTION deal, the cattle deal, we can say too, and across the United States in other situations. 1 year prior to Admiral Studeman's speech in February 22, our national security and intelligence agencies convened a bipartisan group of state and local elected officials and business executives to warn them of the China problem, the China threat. Why? Because China is on the hunt through subnational incursions and influence operations to advance PRC and CCP geopolitical interests. This exploitation of our free and open polity in the United States often occurs through seemingly benign business deals, such as this GOTION deal, that can be located near military installations and become intertwined with academic institutions, state and local governments, and other institutions. At this meeting, our intelligence and national security representatives directed these officials and executives, when dealing with PRC-based and CCP-tied companies, to exercise diligence, conduct due diligence, and ensure transparency, ensuring that they're built into whatever may come of these engagements. This was memorialized in a memo that you can all find online in July of 22, after FBI Director Christopher Wray met his MI5 counterpart to talk principally about the China threat. It's all laid out in black letter for all to read. And it's a very and local officials should follow and abide by going forward. This did not happen with the GOTION deal, needless to say, led by Governor Whitmer, the MEDC, the right place, some in the Michigan legislature, and local officials. In fact, the exact opposite happened. Government and business elites moved fast. They moved secretly and were shrouded by binding and punitive 5- and 10-year non-disclosure agreements, and certainly silly secret code define the directive of the national security intelligence agencies to perform that due diligence and strict scrutiny. The consent of the governed, was ruptured. Elected officials refused to provide information, even to their own fellow elected officials when asked, and unconscionably even to their constituents when they were pressed for answers about GOTION. They were not patient and prudent with this GOTION deal from the top down, not take time to do a basic market analysis. They did not gauge the geopolitical terrain, nor did they risk analysis to ascertain that emanates from such deals. Fortunately, the beauty of our republic manifests by the governed holding their elected officials to account, recalling those elected officials entangled with this corrupted deal, and was certainly a pioneering moment in the United States. This has never happened before until now. And I can tell you, it's the first time that over their entanglement with a subnational incursion by a PRC-based and CCP-tied entity. I can tell you that it has caught the attention of a government agency beyond. So keep up the fight. I'll share a few points to further context of the threat from the PRC and this that are involved with these incursions that provide to the United States. The 2015 PRC CCP national security law and the 2018 national intelligence law that Mr. Kavanaugh referenced earlier outline a whole of society responsibility for China's national security interest. These laws stipulate that citizens and private organizations must surveil, collect, and report, in other words, conduct espionage as directed on behalf or voluntarily on behalf of the Ministry of State Security and other PRCs, CCP, such as the United Front Work Group, as directed. Incidentally, GOTION does have the United Front program, their office in California. There is even a clause that the Chinese government will reimburse those in cooperation with financial funding. The mere fact that the Chinese government could apply these GOTION employees presents a scenario in which GOTION and its employees could be compelled or influenced to conduct nefarious activities to the detriment of national security. Secretary Anthony Blinken recognized the peril of these deals with the PRC, saying in a CBS News interview last year, in China, there's really no distinction between private companies and the state. In January of this year, in a hearing in the Select Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, former defense secretary and respected elder statesman of the Democrat Party, Leon Panetta, when questioned by Congressman Molinar about the threat from the GOTION deal and others similar to it, Mr. Panetta responded, I don't think there's any question they're going to take advantage of the situation. I think we're going to have to be very vigilant about what the hell is going on. In response to the same question, Secretary Pompeo stated, I think it is worse than the fact that they will engage in espionage. I think that is just the top of the list. They will use this in ways that will leverage Chinese advantage. These plants are deeply dangerous to our national security and ought not be built. All parties to the GOTION deal continue to recklessly defy these warnings to the peril of our national security. Roughly 70 miles from where we are sitting lies the secure military installation of Camp Grayling. It's the hub of the National All-Domain Warfighting Center. It is mission critical and trains our soldiers and those of our allies and partners, including Taiwan, in the domains of land, air, maritime, cyber, and space. To further illustrate the nature of the threat from China manifested in deals such as that with GOTION, 2 weeks ago, the Biden administration proposed a rule that added over 50 military installations across 30 states, including Camp Grayling. And this too can be found online. This is a map. The green shows a radius of 100 miles around these military installations, and the smaller green dots are the radius around other military installations. My question is to those here today, how much do you trust GOTION? Do you think that GOTION chose this location by accident, or did they do it as a deliberate attempt to sidestep CFIUS jurisdiction within the Department of Treasury? In my opinion, the message sent by this new rule makes me believe GOTION did choose this location because it fell outside the jurisdiction of CFIUS, as was the case with another PRC-based and CCP-tied company you may have heard of, known as Fufang, that had a proposed deal in North Dakota. Fortunately, it was killed by the Department of the Air Force after it was determined to be a grave national security threat, and it's 12 miles from Grand Forks Air Force Base that does a lot of very sensitive work, and increasingly so. So it's obvious this rule was driven by the Department of Defense and the military department. Matters are caught. There's to include this Camp Grayling security.
Wow.
Further to the release this week by the U.S.-China Economic Security Review Commission reveals that General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, through various CCP apparati, are going more ambitious, brazen, complex, and frequent in their influence operations, targeting media, business, academic, military, and political figures. It seems like every day or week you hear a new instance of PRC citizens conducting espionage over U.S. military installations. So it's all the more important to scale our posture to provide for our common defense. Congressman Molnar and Congressman LaHood, thank you for leading this forum. Such forums are critical to informing and educating our fellow citizens about the nature of the PRC and the CCP. This is particularly important as such encounters with the CCP, such as through GOTION, will continue to increase, and citizens will need the tools to counter these encounters on the state level. To win this second Cold War, it requires a whole of government and a whole of society engagement, and information and education provided in forums such as these is critical to this. It's a very complex time, and it's important that we are nimble, thoughtful, and decisive in our actions. Thank you for your time, and God bless.
Interesting timing on those little audio interferences, huh?
The Ambassador, appreciate your service to our country and then the work you've been doing to help us better understand these issues. Wanted to ask you to elaborate further on the implications of the new rule on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., CFIUS, and what are the implications for the GOTION project, and how do you see that unfolding?
The 30-day comment window is still open. So I think it's important. Citizens, I will be submitting a comment with Ambassador Hoekstra, and I encourage you all to do the same and comment away to give them your on-the-ground input as to what you think ought to happen and why this is a good thing.
How do people do that?
I will send a link, but this is through the Department of Treasury website. It's somewhat user-friendly, but you can find it. It's you click a link on the website, and you look, I think, under CFIUS real estate jurisdiction. I think it was published, I want to say, on I think 18 days ago or 16 days ago, but it's a fairly user-friendly interface. So I think the implications are that, encouraging that Treasury has recognized this threat. I think your good work and the work of you all here has borne fruit, and that's why it's on the map. So I think that I appreciate your good words that you issued the other day after the rule was issued. Congressman Molnar will just kill the Goshen deal as a result of this on account of the threat. So it will really put the strict scrutiny to Goshen that they never really had to do. As we all know, they submitted a short form. Goshen applauded, saying, the decision by Treasury, they don't have jurisdiction. Well, they now have jurisdiction, and this will apply to Goshen. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but we have to remain vigilant. 30 days, you probably about 2 more weeks. Yes, sir.
Representative Hood.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for your service to our country. I'm curious, in your prior experience in service as ambassador, we've heard a lot about the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative and also their Digital Silk Road Initiative. To me, these are really just fronts for authoritarianism. And if you look at what Xi Jinping and the CCP have done on the Belt and Road, they really target a lot of second and third world countries around the globe. They go in and tell them democracy doesn't work anymore. You can't trust the United States. You need to move to our system of government, which is an authoritarian regime, surveillance state, but maybe a little bit more liberal on the economic side. And that's what they do through coercion. And then what they like to do is they like to sell their technology, Huawei, right, and other surveillance mechanisms to the authoritarian regimes. And then it has a double effect. It keeps the regime or dictator in power, but then it allows them to surveil their state and keep control like China does. And then, of course, China has a backdoor to all that technology, right? Because of that Huawei use or the use of Chinese technology, they have a backdoor to that. And so we've seen this play out all over. I'm just curious, your experience in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly Fiji, China has targeted a lot of those smaller countries there with this type of coercion.
An excellent question. So it was stunning warrior diplomacy to the aggressiveness, whether it's them.
Interesting time for
Fiji Police Department, for instance, and others. I mean, the march has scaled since. Fortunately, we're aggressively countering those encounters. But here domestically, it is the same. It is elite capture. It is influence operations. Again, whether it's the tech that Mr. Kavanaugh and others here. Or the manipulation of elected officials to get a toehold. I mean, it's checkbook diplomacy that China is waging internationally. Wow. Here to Michigan, and it's repulsive. And they are on Illinois taxpayers and the teeth of Michigan taxpayers, and it is disgusting. And grateful for your continued engagement against it.
That's a very interesting timing.
I want to just mention Representative Joseph. This concludes the formal portion of the program, unless there's anything any of the panelists want to add to the discussion. But again, I want to thank all of the panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. What I think we're going to do now is the panelists will stick around for a few minutes if people have individual questions. I know there's a number of media who would like to have a further discussion more in depth right now, and we'll have you come up here. But with that, Representative LaHood, again, Darren LaHood, let's give him a round.
Well, thank you all. Real quick, I just want to highlight the fact that it was mentioned earlier by Jason that Goshen was invited to be here today. We have an empty seat for them right here, which I think is apparent with their name tag. We gave them every opportunity to be here today to present their case or to counteract what we just heard today. So I think that speaks volumes on that. And their silence and absence here today says an awful lot about their position. And lastly, I just want to read a couple quotes here that I think are important. This is a quote from Albert Einstein. "If I were to remain silent, I'd be guilty of complicity." Secondly, If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. From Desmond Tutu. And I just want to tell Jason and Amanda here, you are on the right side of justice and history, and we thank you.